So a couple key points from my side of things, Dan, is overall Canadian rents rose by 3.3% annually to an average of $2,187. That data is from August of 2024. Still very expensive, but that does mark the slowest growth rate in 34 months, which I'm sure is making a lot of people happy because rent was getting a little wild there for a second. Now, rent increases have moderated due to, again, as we said, increased apartment completion, slower population growth, and that softening of the labor market. And the average asking rents have also, and this might seem a bit weird because we're talking about how high some of them are overall, but they've actually declined by just less than a full percentage point, 0.7%, since reaching that record high of $2,202, and that was in May of 24. So again, now we're down to 2,187. Not a huge difference, but I mean, take that $20 or $15 and go buy yourself a coffee or a meal.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and important note because when we get to talking about CPI, we're going to talk about rents in inflation, and we're like, so rentals.ca, who I would say probably has better data, to be honest, than what the Bank of Canada is putting out in their CPI basket. No offense, but like Shelter seems to lag a lot in CPI. Mm-hmm. Rentals.ca is saying that it's flatlined, yet it's still reading as part of inflation as high, and so it's a little bit of a question mark. They put in an interesting comparison from condo versus purpose-built rental, where they mention purpose-built rental apartments increased by 6.5% annually, while condominium apartments rose only by 0.1%. So basically didn't rise, I would call that. And so
the high rises aren't rising.
Yeah, but this is good because this is an incentivized purpose-built rental development. But it, as an investor, you have to think about, I'm now competing with all of that new purpose-built rental housing stock. You go look at housing starts, CMHC housing starts, and rentals are like if it wasn't for purpose-built rentals, we wouldn't be having housing starts. So studio condos have decreased for 6 consecutive months, down 3.3% year over year in August. And significant regional variations exist. Obviously, some areas like Saskatchewan seeing increases, while BC and Ontario saw some pretty big declines, which you already covered. So anything you want to add before we hop into the next one here?
I'll say two quick things here. One, I love to see the purpose-built rentals. I like to see that section of the market grow, because that means a lot of the incentives and new products that we've seen come to the market are actually working. The other thing I will add is I am totally okay with studio condominium rents decreasing because as a man who once lived in a studio in a relationship, studio apartments are a funny thing, and they are just getting smaller and smaller. And for a while there, they were just ridiculously expensive. So I think we're seeing some good stuff. But yeah, let's keep moving here, Dan.
Yeah, so hit me off with the next one.
Well, have you ever wondered where is the best city to develop property? Because that's what we're going to cover next here, Dan. And I know you probably thought about that, being you.
I honestly haven't really wondered, but I know you're trying to do a hook here. So I probably should, honestly, though, now that you've asked me the question, I probably should be thinking about that.
Well, you don't have to wonder anymore, okay? Because BILD, B-I-L-D, released another municipal benchmark study, and they are a great organization, friend of the show that we've covered a lot of reports from over the years. So Dan, hit me with this first piece here.
Well, yeah, when we were at the OHBA, you actually interviewed him about, it was the day before they released this report. So
yeah.
So basically, BILD hires Altus Economic Consulting to create this GTA municipal benchmarking study. And it shows how cities handle property development. They did this twice before, 2022 and 2020 as well. So it's becoming like a every 2-year kind of thing.
So this report specifically, this BILD report, which just covers, as you said, in the GTA, but the CHBA, the Canadian Home Builders Association, another friend of the show, does a similar report that ranks towns nationally. And let's just say that almost all of the worst ones are, of course, here in Ontario. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, how your town stacks up, well, just assume that it's doing better than any of the ones that we are going to discuss on this list.
Yeah, and we're not going to do a whole episode on this yet because we are going to wait for that 2024 CHBA report to come out because they did one in 2020 and 2022 as well. So I'm assuming, I don't know, I know you got in an argument with the guy from CHBA at
The
the
president,
OHBA
actually.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
actually, we both kind of got in.
Yeah. No, I'm just joking. But
No,
but no, I
he's a
think he's
great
going to come.
guy.
I think he's going
Yeah.
to come on the show, and hopefully we can have him on when they release the report. So we'll have to reach out to him to discuss that. But I'm going to read their list first because this is from their 2022, and then we'll get to the build report and we can go through the 2024 GTA numbers. So estimated approval timelines by municipality in 2022. I'm just going to read the list from best to worst. Okay, so best approval timelines in the country: Charlottetown, followed by Saskatoon, then Regina, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, St. John's, London, Ottawa, Brampton. I'll leave it there. That's your top 10 right there. Okay. Now, give me an idea of what this study looks at, Nick, the build study, and then we can kind of dive into, I'll read three of the key findings from the report, and then you can read the list of the GTA's worst, and then we'll move on to the next article because we are going to do, again, we're going to do a full episode on this when we have the national data set.
Yeah, so the study looks at several planning policy related factors that include things contributing to housing affordability and pressures in different regions. And those include things like demographic and residential development trends, breakdown of municipal planning development application stats, reviews of municipal charges that have been imposed on new developments, analysis of municipal features and tools used to facilitate more efficient and transparent development processes, and an overview of municipal achievements and commentary on noteworthy planning trends and issues.
Yeah, so I'm going to quickly read the three key findings that I found here. So, and then we'll get to the wall of shame. So, housing affordability has worsened since the first report that they did. This is number one. Number two is that new home building didn't keep up with population growth. No surprise there. I'm not going to belabor that discussion. This is the really key one from my perspective. Application submissions have fallen significantly over the last 2 years, threatening future housing supply. And so you went from basically 2,400 applications in 2021 to 2,100 applications in 2022 to 1,200 applications in 2023. Okay, so we're already at half, from 2,400 to 1,200. Now let's look at January to May of 2024. You only have 430. So we're on track to hit basically below 1,000 applications.
That is wild. I think that deserves another ouch, to be honest.
Yeah, that's an ouch for sure. And then the fourth key finding is that timelines are improving, but they're still remaining excessively high. And this is where you're going to get to the wall of shame, which is average timeline by all application types by municipality. And we're going to go from best to worst.
Okay. Yeah, this hurts. Okay. So first, which is the best, we've got Barrie. Now back in 2022, took an average of 13.1 months. Actually in 2024, only 11.2 months. So we are actually down 1.9 months. Dan, why don't I do the first five here and you can do the last five? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, just read the 2024 because we'll dive into it at a later date once we get to the national.
Right. Okay. So Whitby, we've got 12.4 months, so over a year. Oakville, 14, over 14 months. Brampton, over 14 months. And then Clarington, which keeps on making the news for some not so great stuff, 14.3 months. So over a year, other than in Barrie where you sneak in at 11 months, every one of these you're waiting over a year for your application. So
yeah,
those are actually all the either improvements or the same. Now let's get to the fun stuff and see.
Only a couple got worse.
But these are just so long regardless. It doesn't even matter if they're worse or not. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So basically we have Vaughan at 18 months, Innisfil at 19 months, Oshawa, Markham, and Milton at just under 2 years. And then, Bradford's just under 2 years as well. And then over 2 years, you've got Toronto, Mississauga, Caledon, and Richmond Hill. Richmond Hill is actually almost 3 years. So
33.6 months for an application. Like,
yeah,
guys, like, what are we doing here? It's
champions of
crazy.
affordable housing, man.
Oh, man.
I guess let's pivot to inflation now. We'll get to, I guess, some fake good news or whatever. I don't know what we're calling this, but I'm just going to read a tweet here from David Rosenberg, Econ Guy Rosie, founder and president of Rosenberg Research Associates, Inc. It says, strip out auto insurance premiums and mortgage interest costs, and Canada's CPI deflated 0.1% month over month in September, and the year over year trend has collapsed to under 1%. The Bank of Canada shouldn't have to think too hard about cutting rates 50 basis points at next week's policy meeting. I agree with that tweet. Any takeaways on your end from today's CPI print, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I am very interested to see what happens, and I guess we'll timestamp this. This is being recorded on October 15th here, just so people understand when we're talking about. There's the next Bank of Canada meeting where they will or will not either cut rates. They either will cut rates or hold them. I doubt we'll see an increase. I think a lot of people have been waiting for that 50 basis point cut. Some people have been waiting for the wrong reasons. I think my key points and takeaways from the Consumer Price Index report that was published in September, so last month, is that CPI rose 1.6% year over year, and that's down from 2% in August, making this the smallest yearly increase since February of 2021. So that seems to be a good thing. Gasoline prices fell 10.7% year over year.
I think oil just blew off again, like another 5% today, which is October 15th. So that might stay. That might hold.
Okay, nice. And
I thought like the Middle East tensions would probably cause it to increase, but I think that we're at demand destruction phase of the whole recession thing, stuff going on in China, et cetera. We're going to talk about China too, actually. I didn't put it in
demand destruction phase. I like that. Yeah, I mean, and gasoline prices contribute significantly to overall CPI deceleration. And then, CPI excluding gas actually rose 2.2%. So that does go back to match August's increase, but that was before I knew that, we're down another 5%. So, yeah, interesting. I'm excited to see what the Bank of Canada does with this information. What about you, Dan? What are some other takeaways from your side of things?
Yeah, so big takeaways from today's CPI print, from my perspective, was rent prices. They have as increasing at a slower pace of 8.2% year over year compared to almost 9% last month. So rents are disinflationary. I would actually say, based on the rentals.ca data that we just presented, rents are deflationary, but again, their data must be lagging because it's not actually, rents are going down on a year over year basis according to rentals.ca. They're going up 10% on a year over year basis according to StatCan's data. So there's something going on here, and this is where the Bank of Canada is forced to use kind of lagging data, which means that they overshoot in either direction, right? Because similarly, they use mortgage interest, which we'll talk about. So mortgage interest is like a huge piece of, if you just take like the two components of shelter out of inflation, we're almost at 0%. And Canada is one of the only places that actually uses mortgage interest as a component of CPI, which I recently learned from Benjamin Tao. I think New Zealand's the only other one. And so, and again, the Bank of Canada is creating that increase, right? So they're kind of battling themselves. Food prices, again, I don't need to mention this one. People know that food prices are rising. They rose 2.5%, outpacing headline inflation for the second consecutive month. And on a monthly basis, CPI fell 0.4% in September, following a 0.2% decline in August. So on a monthly basis, we're actually disinflationary for 2 months in a row now.